Hello and welcome to the Fin to the Woods podcast with me, Finian Hackett. How are we all? It's been a week. It has been a week in the world, hasn't it? An interesting one at that. With the US election, we will get onto that later. But it's been a week for theatre news as well. There's been a few dramas over in the States and a lot of theatre news as well, which is always exciting. So this is a bit of a jam-packed episode. And we're going to kick off by talking about what I've been up to in the last week. So this past week, I was follow spotting for a local production of Gilbert and Sullivan's HMS Pinafore at my family's theatre. Now this was just randomly because someone dropped out and they needed someone, so I went along and follow spotted for the week, and I didn't know anything about GNS. I didn't know any of their music really. I knew a few songs. I knew Three Little Maids from the Mikado, but mainly the Hot Mikado version, and I knew a couple of other songs just because they have been around for a very long time. But this was my first experience of GNS, and it is a kind of lovely thing, isn't it? It is very twee, it's very British, it's very kind of deep-rooted into the culture of musical theatre, and GNS were and are the backbone for all of those early musicals and the structures they hold as well. And it was just a really kind of fun thing to be a part of. And yeah, and some of the songs are good and they're extremely catchy. They do get stuck in your head because it is majority sung through, and a lot of the songs are kind of repeating elements of other songs from earlier on in the show and this, that and the other. So it's just a very catchy score, and HMS Pinafore is quite an easy GNS to understand. It's not too complex and the storyline is quite fun, a bit incestuous at points, but you have to let that slide. It was written in the 1870s. But follow spotting, on the other hand, is a really hard thing to do, I've discovered, because you have to have really good posture, and I don't have very good posture at the best of times. So when you're crouched over the follow spot and you're like that for a whole week, trust me, I need a bath. I am in agony in my back, which sounds very dramatic because I am only 21, but I think I have a dodgy spine or something. But it is quite a hard thing to do, especially with the follow spots at the theatre. They are quite small and quite, not flimsy, that's the wrong word, but quite lightweight. So every tiny move that you do, the spot also does. So you really have to have a steady hand as well. And I also don't have a very steady hand. So I got better as the week went on, which was good, because after a day of tech and another day with a dress, by the time we got to the shows, I was fine and I was doing okay. But it is an art. It is an art. So I commend everyone who does it all the time, because I personally couldn't. And also, it isn't the most necessarily stimulating job in theatre backstage that you could have, but it's a very necessary one, and is so important for the lighting of a production, especially on a musical, to focus the attention on whoever's singing or whoever's performing. So it's a really important and integral part of the visual look of a show. So I feel like I played a little part in helping it all come together. And then once I'd done all that at the theatre during the week, on the Sunday, Kerry Ellis, the West End actress, came to the theatre on her tour. It's called Kerry Ellis, Queen of the West End, and it was just kind of a just under 2-hour show where she spoke about her career and all the shows she's done and everything that she's kind of achieved across her career. A lot of it was to do with her work with Brian May and all the tours that she did with him and how she got to meet him through him coming to see her in My Fair Lady, and then her doing We Will Rock You, and then obviously them going off across the world doing all these amazing concerts in all these amazing venues. And she has an incredible voice. Her voice is fantastic, and it was really lovely to hear her sing. She's been to the theatre before a few months ago in a review called Flops, so this was not her first visit to the theatre, but she seemed to like it very much, which is always really nice. And also Ashton, who I've known for a very long time, was chosen to be a performer with her, well, not with her, as a soloist for a few minutes in her production. Apparently every venue that she goes to, she has someone who has won the competition to perform and kind of encourage the new generation, the next generation of musical theatre talent. And he sung I'm Alive from Next to Normal, a brilliant song, and he did it really, really well, and I was very, very proud and happy to see him perform. So yeah, very fun week at the Royal Hippodrome in Eastbourne for me. But over in the US, it hasn't been as fun. Last week was the US election between Kamala Harris and Donald Trump, and unfortunately, Donald Trump won the election. He will be the next president of the United States. The Republican Party also won the Senate as well, and are also on track to win the House of Representatives as well. So they are pretty much in charge over there, the Republicans, for the next 4 years, and I think that is quite a worrying prospect. I was surprised in a way that he won, but also not, because they voted him in once. They voted him in before, and clearly, for some reason, a large majority of Americans like him. Over 70 million people voted for him, which I think's just baffling, and I don't see the appeal, but I think a lot of people in America aren't very clever, and I genuinely believe that. I feel that they're quite an uneducated country in regards to how they vote on their beliefs, and certain states in America are very, very, very pro-Trump, and certain states are very, very pro-Democrat and pro-Harris. So they are really, really messed up as a country, and I think it's going to be a very scary and also kind of worrying 4 years for the US and the rest of the world if he puts forward what he wants to do. So, yes, we'll see how that goes, but this has leaked into the world of Broadway, specifically Nicole Scherzinger. So, as you know, she's currently starring as Norma Desmond in Sunset Boulevard on Broadway, and she's got herself in a right pile of dog poo this week with regards to a comment she left on a post on Instagram. So she commented on a post from Russell Brand, and it was a photo of him holding a hat that said, "Make Jesus First Again," obviously harking back to Donald Trump's hat that everyone wears that says, "Make America Great Again," which is a red kind of baseball cap, and it was the same lettering but with the words "Make Jesus First Again." And she commented on this post saying, "Where do I get this hat?" with a question mark and an exclamation mark after it. And there was kind of a bit of an outpour of anger towards her and confusion over whether this meant she was a Trump supporter or just a Christian supporter. But also the issue here lies with the fact not just if there were links to Trump, which I think a surprising amount of celebrities probably did vote for Trump and we just don't know it, but the links to Russell Brand, who is currently under quite a large investigation by the Met Police for historic sexual assault offences, and we'll find out in the next few weeks if he is going to be charged with anything to do with that. Nothing has been charged yet. There was a big documentary last year on Channel 4 about all these allegations against him, so he has, after being quite a anti-government, quite left-wing comedian about 20 years ago, 20 years ago, to then becoming a bit of a conspiracy theorist and being quite anti-vax and quite kind of just spouting random things online and getting millions of views for it. And now he's become a Trump supporter and has also now become a heavy Christian, and it's now his life being a Christian. That's what he kind of is promoting online. So his career has been interesting over the last kind of year, really, and I think, for me, the fact that she's interacting with him on Instagram quite publicly is worrying in itself, because clearly he has some very interesting views and other things going on in his life at the moment. And this isn't the first time that she has expressed slightly controversial views. Back in 2016, I believe it was, she expressed her stance of being very pro-life and very anti-abortion, which was a big factor and big topic of discussion in the US election that has just gone. And she almost turned down a role in the remake of Dirty Dancing in the role of Penny due to the abortion storyline that the character goes through. She gets pregnant and then has an illegal abortion. And Nicole Scherzinger has said that her father is a bishop and her family is in her words, really hardcore against abortion, and she would encourage everyone to keep their babies. I can see why people have taken the comment on the Russell Brand post and her previous comments as saying that she is a Trump supporter. And so this had been going on for a few days, and she then released a statement, which I shall read to you now. She said, "I deeply apologise for the hurt caused by my recent engagement with some social media posts. When I commented on these posts, I made the mistake of not realising that they could be easily interpreted as being politically related, and I apologise to anyone who understandably reached that conclusion. Many presumptions are being drawn which do not reflect who I am, what I stand for, or who I voted for. Many of the marginalised communities feeling hurt and concerned by the results of the presidential election are people I care about most. I stand with them, as I always have, throughout my life and career. If you know me, you know that. Like so many others in times of adversity and uncertainty, I turned to my faith. I believed that the posts I engaged with were about encouraging people to choose love and faith, putting Jesus first. For me, Christ embodies peace, compassion, hope, and above all, unconditional love, especially for those who may feel it the least right now. I come from a place of love, and I will always support values that bring us closer together. It's so important we come together with compassion and love one another more now than ever." Now, I think that's a lot of words that don't really mean a lot, in my opinion. I think she kind of said the same thing over and over again. But to say that she didn't realise that they could be easily interpreted as being politically related is ignorant. I'm sorry, it is. It's 2024. And Donald Trump's message and what he stands for has been prevalent in the press and in day-to-day life for well over a decade now. And to say that you weren't aware that these things were linked to that is just ignorant. And I don't think, even now as a celebrity, you cannot say, "Oh, I'm not really into politics. Oh, I'm not very politically aware." It's 2024. You need to be, and you have to be. And I think people who say that are extremely privileged to not have to worry about election results, especially in an election that could cause a lot of problems for a large majority of Nicole Scherzinger's fan base. And also, if she didn't vote for Donald Trump, right, she doesn't have to say who she voted for, that is fine, but if she really, really, really wanted to stop these rumours that she voted for Trump, surely she would say, "I voted for Kamala Harris." That is all she would need to say. Or someone else that she voted for. She might have voted for Jill Stein from the Green Party, another controversial figure. But she could have put it to bed, but she hasn't. And these rumours will now follow her for the next few weeks and months and years. And will it hurt her chances at winning the Tony for Sunset Boulevard? I don't know. Because a lot of people on the Tony committee, a lot of those producers, would probably have voted for Trump. Let's be honest here, because they're rich. And they'd quite like a tax cut, I imagine. But will it affect her chances? Quite probably. The Broadway community is a very liberal group of people and has been for a very long time. And people like her main competition for the award, Audra McDonald, is very, very pro-Harris and very, very anti-Trump. Politics shouldn't necessarily get in the way of awards, but I have a feeling it could do, and it could hurt her chances. I'm not saying that's right, but I'm just saying that I think that could be a possibility. So, a very controversial week for her, and one that I think is going to follow her around for a long time like a bad smell. Now, this isn't the only Broadway drama from the last week. It's been an interesting time between Hell's Kitchen and The Roommate. So these two shows are currently playing on Broadway. Hell's Kitchen at the Schubert Theatre and The Roommate at the Booth Theatre. Now, Keisha Lewis, who is a cast member from Hell's Kitchen, has called out Patti LuPone after Patti LuPone reached out to the owners of the Schubert Theatre and asked them to adjust the sound design for Hell's Kitchen as the volume of the show was so loud it could be heard during the performance of The Roommate next door. So the Schubert and the Booth share a back wall, so I think their stages back onto one another, so obviously sound does leak through each venue. LuPone's request for this to happen was granted, and she sent flowers and a card thanking the cast and crew for doing this for them. And Patti LuPone then, a few days later, declined to sign a playbill for Hell's Kitchen and said, "I'm not signing this playbill for Hell's Kitchen, they were too loud." And this caused a bit of controversy online. I mean, I think it would be weird for her to sign a playbill for a show that she's not in anyway, and I think that's probably quite normal for actors to not sign playbills for shows they are not currently in. However, Keisha Lewis has said that Patti LuPone's comments were a form of microaggression, which is a subtle and unintentional comment that conveys negative stereotypes towards someone's race. And Keisha Lewis said in a statement, "Referring to a predominantly black Broadway show as loud can unintentionally reinforce harmful stereotypes, and it also feels dismissive of the artistry and the voices that are being celebrated on stage." So many people who have gone to see the play have said yes, the music was very loud and that they could hear Hell's Kitchen in the booth while they were watching The Roommate, so they were glad that this had changed. And producers of The Roommate said that this was the case. In a statement, they said, "We are grateful for everyone at Hell's Kitchen for adjusting their cues to prevent sound bleed into our theatre, which was affecting backstage, on stage, and into the audience. On Broadway, these historic buildings were built long before the existence of modern sound amplification and sit side by side, playhouses sharing walls with musical houses. These kind of sound accommodations from one show to another one are not unusual and are always deeply appreciated. We're proud to share Schubert Alley with Hell's Kitchen and wish our neighbours continued success." Now, I'm not going to sit here and say that Keisha Lewis was wrong for saying that Patti LuPone's comments were microaggressions, because it's not my place to say that. I do think there is some sense of, if any Broadway diva like Patti LuPone would say, "Oh, can the show next door turn their sound down?" I get how that comes across as possibly a bit rude and a bit kind of using your status to get what you want, basically. And I see where they're coming from on that. Hopefully there isn't too much kind of animosity between the productions, because that's just not fun for anyone. And Broadway is obviously meant to be a very loving and kind and supportive community. I'm hoping that Patti LuPone meant what she said in a kind manner and it wasn't in a negative way. And hopefully Keisha Lewis and Patti LuPone have had a discussion and will hopefully sort things out between them and will be able to have a decent conversation about it. Let's move away from controversy and talk about the Grammy Awards. So the nominations have been announced for the 2025 Grammy Awards, and there's been quite a host of Broadway performers who have been nominated. So Sabrina Carpenter has picked up 6 nominations for her recent album Short and Sweet, and you might be thinking, what's her link to musical theatre? But she very briefly starred in Mean Girls on Broadway just before the COVID pandemic hit, so her run was cut short, but she has been on Broadway before, so I wanted to mention her. But also some other nominees include Aaron Lazar's album Impossible Dream, which has been nominated for Best Traditional Pop Vocal Album. He has appeared in many Broadway shows, and he was diagnosed recently with the debilitating disease that is ALS. So his album has kind of celebrated his career and him, and he did a few duets and kind of collaborations with other Broadway performers, and I'm so happy that that album has been nominated, and I really would love for him to win. The Best Musical Theatre Album category is stacked this year, so you've got the original Broadway cast recordings of Hell's Kitchen, The Notebook, The Outsiders and Suffs, as well as the revival cast recordings of Merrily We Roll Along and The Wiz. So for Hell's Kitchen and all those other new shows, obviously first-time nominees, Merrily We Roll Along was nominated back in the 80s for its original cast recording, but lost out to Dreamgirls, rightfully so I'd say, because Dreamgirls is fantastic, and The Wiz is a previous winner of this category for its original cast recording. So does The Wiz have the slight upper hand? I don't know, but I'd like to see Merrily win, because obviously I'm a big Sondheim fan, and it is a fantastic cast recording, so I think that might have the edge, I really do. I think Suffs has quite a good chance, maybe Hell's Kitchen because of the Alicia Keys link. I don't know, we'll have to wait and see with that one. Barbra Streisand is nominated for Best Audiobook Narration and Storytelling for her book My Name is Barbara, a fantastic 48-hour long, something ridiculous like that, audiobook that I have listened to and it's fantastic. I'd love for her to win. The Colour Purple and Maestro have been nominated for Best Compilation Soundtrack for Visual Media, and The Colour Purple is also nominated for Best Score Soundtrack for Visual Media. Love Will Survive, which is a song sung by Barbra Streisand for the tattooist of Auschwitz, is nominated for Best Song Written for Visual Media. The Sound of Music has been nominated for Best Historical Album for its recent Super Deluxe edition. I love that it's been nominated for a Grammy, 60 years after it came out. And The Hours, which is an opera which starred Kelly O'Hara and Renee Fleming, is nominated for Best Opera Recording. So many Broadway alumni, many theatre stars in and amongst the nominees, not just in the Best Musical Theatre category. Representation across the board in various different genres of music. Right, let's talk about some new productions that have been announced in the past week. So, A Streetcar Named Desire with Paul Mescal is going to return to the West End pre-Broadway. So it was previously in the West End earlier this year and was a huge success, was selling like hotcakes, and it's going to run from the 3rd to the 22nd of February, a very short time, at the Noel Coward Theatre in London before opening in Brooklyn later on next year. I really need to get tickets for this. I'm hoping I get tickets for this because I missed out last time and it's apparently amazing. It won lots of Olivier Awards, so I need to make sure I go and see that. Miss Saigon is heading out on a brand new tour across the country next year. So this is going to be a modern version, a modernised version for venues that are slightly smaller than the venues that the original production had to tour to. And I'm assuming that means the set is going to be slightly less and maybe the helicopter won't be featured, I'm not sure. But it's going to open in Newcastle next October and then go to Edinburgh, Manchester, Birmingham, Leeds, Oxford and many other places across the country as well that haven't been announced yet. Another tour has also announced its complete tour dates. This is Matthew Bourne's Swan Lake, and it's going to tour next year to Liverpool, Bristol, Southampton, the Wales Millennium Centre, Canterbury, Glasgow, Bradford, lots of dates all across the country. The Mill at Sonning has announced its 2025 into 2020, early 2026 season. So it's going to open with The Farce. It runs in the family from the 13th of February to the 12th of April. And then Death Comes to Pemberley from the 1st of May to the 28th of June. Then Don't Rock the Boat from the 10th of July to the 9th of September. A production of The Importance of Being Earnest, which is going to be a 60-minute kind of immersive production where you get served high tea, and that's from the 9th to the 13th of September. Then The Shadow in the Mirror from the 18th of September to the 8th of November. And then their big musical production next year is going to be My Fair Lady, which is going to run from November the 20th to the 17th of January 2026. I've always wanted to go to the Mill at Sonning and I've never gone, and it's annoying me that I've never gone, so maybe I need to go and see that Importance of Being Earnest, and also eat a scone or scone, a big controversial subject, but I want to go and eat a scone/scone whilst I watch Importance of Being Earnest. That sounds fabulous. And I guess the biggest piece of news this week for the West End and for London is the transfer of The Great Gatsby from Broadway. So this is going to preview from the 11th of April and open on April 24th. At the London Coliseum. It's going to be booking till September the 7th, and this is the current version that is taking Broadway by storm. It's been a huge success, and it won the Tony for Best Costume Design, and this is not The Great Gatsby that was written by Florence Welch from Florence and the Machine, because that was rumoured to be coming over to London, but I doubt it will now that this other version's come over. It looks great and the music's great, and I have loved the marketing for this version of The Great Gatsby, so I'm looking forward to catching that when that's over here, hopefully with Jeremy Jordan in as well. There's also been a few concert announcements this week. So Alan Menken, the man behind the likes of Beauty and the Beast, Little Shop of Horrors, Enchanted, Little Mermaid, Tangled, Newsies, just wonderful, wonderful Disney and musical theatre work, is going to do a concert all by himself at the London Palladium on Sunday the 9th of March. I cannot wait. Again, I need to get tickets. I need to start saving up. I just want to go and see all this stuff, but it costs money, and money that I do not have because I need a full-time job. So that's a whole nother topic altogether. And also another concert, a benefit production of Two Gentlemen of Verona, the musical, will play the 16th of September at the Peter J. Sharp Theatre over in the States, and it's going to star Chuck Cooper and Andre de Shields. Now, this musical, not many people will have heard of, but it beat the likes of Follies and Grease for Best Musical at the Tonys back in the 70s. So it is a big Tony Award winning musical, but just not many people know about it. It's from the same writers as Hair, and it'll be interesting to see if this sparks any interest in mounting a revival of the show. And Jessica Vosk will perform with the New York Pops this December at Carnegie Hall for their annual Christmas concert, and I'm sure that will be lovely. This week, the Arts Council here in the UK has launched a new touring initiative, which is going to be an incentive for productions to tour. And these are going to be repayable grants to help producers tour to many regional venues. And these grants are up to 25% of a production's initial capitalisation costs, and with a cap of £500,000 per show. And I think this is a great idea to help boost touring. They're going to support musicals, plays, dance shows, and I really think touring is such an important part of making musical theatre accessible for people all across the country. Not everyone can get to London, and I think people forget that sometimes. I forget it. I live in the southeast. I live in an easy area to get to London, and lots of people don't have that, and I think we forget about that sometimes, but touring is so important and helps spread the love of theatre all across the country, so I am all for this. And also, just when you thought London didn't need another theatre, another one is opening. A brand new theatre will open next autumn in West London, inside Westfield Shopping Centre in Shepherd's Bush. You did hear me correctly. And this is going to be called the Capitol Theatre, and it's going to have a 620-seat flexible auditorium, and you're never going to be more than 9 rows back from the front of the stage, which it sounds great, to be honest, but also quite an intimate venue, which I also like the sound of. But, my issue is their opening production is Dirty Dancing. Is there no other shows we could have put in there? An exciting revival of something, some new work. I understand they want it to sell, but Dirty Dancing has toured the UK all the time, and it's been in the West End multiple times. Does it need to be back in London again? And it's on from the 23rd of October to the 1st of March, which is quite a long time as well. I just wish that this new theatre would then encourage productions of new work and also just different shows that aren't things that we've seen time and time again. I get it's to make money, and they'll have to make money back after spending a lot of money building it, but I still find it slightly frustrating. And you may have seen this week that voting is now open for the 25th annual What's on Stage Awards. So nominations close on the 21st of November at 12 p.m. So if you haven't voted, make sure you do so. I haven't yet, but when I do, I think I'll probably tell you what I've put forward in each category, because I think it might be quite interesting to talk about. But the great thing is they've added a category for wigs, hair and makeup. So there's been talk about adding a category like this to the Tonys and the Oliviers for quite a long time, and I think it's needed. They play such a big part in the look of a production. I don't understand why it gets continuously overlooked by all the awards. So the What's on Stage Awards are making the right move. All those technical categories are decided by a panel and then are voted on by the public at a later date. However, all the other categories, the performance awards and all the shows, you can submit the shows that you'd like to see be nominated. I have a few ideas of what I'm going to nominate, but I'll let you know once I've done it. Before we get on to some TV, film and album news, I want to talk about someone that we lost in the past week, and that is Quincy Jones, who died at the age of 91. So he was a prolific music producer and arranger. He had 80 Grammy nominations, and he won 28 Grammys across his career. Crazy, crazy, crazy. And he, like many great people, had links to musical theatre. He helped to adapt, score and produce the film version of The Wiz in 1978. He also wrote some of the extra songs for the movie as well. And Michael Jackson was a big star of that film as the Scarecrow, and this was actually where Quincy Jones met Michael Jackson. And he would go on to produce 3 of Michael Jackson's best-selling albums and best-selling singles as well. Bad, Thriller, and Off the Wall. 3 fantastic Michael Jackson albums. And they met on the set of The Wiz, and without The Wiz, we might not have got some of those fabulous things from Michael Jackson. And in the film, actually, Quincy Jones makes an appearance as the Emerald City pianist and in a little cameo role, which I think's hilarious. And he also produced both Broadway productions of The Colour Purple because he was the original composer for the score of the original film. He then went on to help produce the original Broadway production in the mid-noughties and then the revival 10 years later, and also the recent film adaptation of the musical as well. It's been a few weeks now since we lost the wonderful Gavin Creel as well, and they finally announced when the dimming of the Broadway lights is going to be for him. So there is going to be a public memorial taking place on December the 2nd at 4 p.m. at the St James Theatre on Broadway, and the following day at 6:45 p.m. every Broadway theatre will dim their lights in his honour. It still shocks me every time I see things about it and his passing. It still kind of hits me right in the core. It's horrible, and I still think it's horrendously sad. And as I've mentioned a few times, there was quite a lot of controversy surrounding the dimming and the fact that he wasn't initially given a full dimming, and the Broadway League got in lots of hot water about it. However, the Broadway League have now announced this week that they are ceasing announcing these marquee dimmings. They were founded, the Broadway League, to corroborate the efforts of all 41 theatre owners and theatres across Broadway, and now there is going to be a new Broadway Theatre Owners Committee which will make the announcements with regards to the dimming. So these will be the Nederlander Theatres, the Schubert Theatres, ATG, Disney, the Lincoln Centre, Manhattan Theatre Club, the Roundabout Theatre Company, Second Stage Theatre and Circle in the Square. They're going to form this new committee which is going to kind of help make these decisions, and hopefully the decisions will be right from now on in. Right, moving on to TV, film and album news. So over on TV, Defying Gravity, The Curtain Rises on Wicked will premiere on Sky Arts in the UK on the 16th of November at 8 p.m. So this is a big behind the scenes documentary on the making of the new Wicked movie which comes out on the 22nd of November, and this behind the scenes documentary is being broadcast 3 days before it's being broadcast in the States on NBC on November the 19th. I think that will be really interesting. 2-time Tony nominee Kate Baldwin has joined the cast of the upcoming series of The Gilded Age, which is filled with Broadway actors, and she's going to play the older sister of the character John Adams, which is played by another Broadway actor, Claiborne Elder. Broadway's Leading Men, a musical celebration, is going to air on PBS on November the 29th, and this was filmed at Howard University in February this year, so quite a long time ago. But the men that they've got in this: Christian Ball, Christopher Jackson, Norm Lewis, Matthew Morrison, Andre de Shields, Telly Lee Young, Victor Garber, Titus Burgess. It's just packed with fantastic performers, and I hope we get to see that in the UK. We never really do with all those fantastic PBS concerts. We have to see clips or kind of watch them illegally. I don't do that, obviously, but I really hope we get to see that over here. And Jonathan Groff, the recent Tony winner, will appear in the new Amazon TV series Étoile. I think that's how you say it. It's French. And it's set in the ballet industry in New York and Paris. And it's come from Amy Sherman Palladino, who is behind The Gilmore Girls and The Marvelous Mrs. Maisel. So I think that will be a fantastic series. The film of Wicked is obviously coming out, as I said, but there have been a few cameo announcements over the past week. Stephen Schwartz, the composer, will appear as the guard in One Short Day that says, "The wizard will see you now," which I think's a brilliant place to put him into the film. He looks great. There's a little photo I've seen of him with a big moustache. He looks fabulous. And also Alice Fern, who is a wonderful West End actress who played Elphaba in the West End, is going to appear as Glinda's mother. Kerry Ellis is also going to appear in the film, as will Georgina Anura, Luke Bayer, Diane Pilkington, and many other West End actors. And Robert Zemeckis, who was the director of the 3 original Back to the Future films, has expressed an interest in turning the Back to the Future musical into a film. This isn't the first time we've seen this be done. The Producers was turned into a film once more, into a musical film back in the noughties, and most recently Mean Girls as well. So it wouldn't be unheard of, but apparently the people at Universal don't get it, according to him. I'm not surprised, because the Back to the Future films are so iconic, and I don't think you could necessarily do them justice again, even if it was the musical, because I still do think that the films are better than the musical. The musical is great, but those films are just so iconic. So we'll have to see if that actually happens, but I doubt it will. And this week, Bradley Jaden has announced his album, Bradley Jaden Recorded Live in London, will come out on the 29th of November. It was recorded at Cadogan Hall in London, and it features songs from Shrek, The Bridges of Madison County, Wicked, Company, and many more. Let's round off the episode with some casting news. So Luke Brady will play the lead role of Hercules in the musical of the same name in London next year. They've announced now as well it's going to start previews on the 6th of June and open on the 24th, and it's booking currently until the 10th of January 2026. Luke previously appeared in The Prince of Egypt at the Dominion and Assassins in Chichester, as well as Sweeney in Chichester and in the West End as well. Drag the Musical off Broadway, which has been a big success, produced by Liza Minnelli, is going to welcome Tony nominee Adam Pascal, who's famous for his role in Rent, from December the 11th this year. I don't know when he's in it till, but he joins in mid-December. More casting has been announced for Elektra with Brie Larson, most notably Patrick Vale, who starred in Oklahoma on Broadway, and Stockard Channing, who played Rizzo in Grease. And I am now going to see this in January because it's doing a preview period in Brighton, which isn't far from me. So I'm going to see this in mid-January, and I'm quite excited. I know nothing about the play or what it's about, but I get to see Stockard Channing, which is extremely exciting. Ore Aduba will take over the role of Caractacus Potts in the UK tour of Chitty Chitty Bang Bang. Early next year, he's taking over from Adam Garcia, who's currently playing the part, and Ore is going to join the show in Birmingham on the 4th of March and continue through the end of the tour. Joseph Milson will join Tracy Ann Oberman in the role of Antonio in The Merchant of Venice 1936 at the Trafalgar Theatre in London from the end of December to the end of January, before that ends up going on a UK tour. Michael McKean and Donald Webber Jr. will join Kieran Culkin in the Broadway revival of Glengarry Glen Ross next spring on Broadway. Obviously, this is written by controversial playwright David Mamet and directed by Patrick Marber. And also, Kristen Scott Thomas and Johnny Flynn will join Mark Rylance for a benefit production of Shakespeare's Venus and Adonis for the Marylebone Theatre on the 17th of November this year. My Fin to the Woods vaguely fun fact for you, which I don't think I've mentioned before, is that Sherida Langford, who is mother of the Strallan sisters and sister to Bonnie Langford, is going to appear in the Wicked film as the librarian, and she directed me in Scrooge when I played Tiny Tim. So there's my little link to the Wicked movie. Oh, that was quite a lot this week. Lots of news, lots of dramas, and hopefully there won't be too many more in the weeks to come, but you never know with the world of theatre. There's always something coming our way from round the corner that we don't expect. But thank you for listening once again, and please do leave a rating and a review on Apple Podcasts or Spotify or wherever you listen to this podcast. And of course, once more, I will speak to you again next week.